I'm Diane Young, the Executive Director of the Concord Downtown Development Corporation. And on behalf of our organization and the City of Concord, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to Downtown Concord and the Hotel Concord today, and to thank you for your support of the North Carolina Historic Investment Tax Credit. We are gathered today in one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, but that doesn't mean that Concord does not have a track record for historic preservation. By all means, the elected officials and city staff have worked very hard for decades to preserve our history, and there's a lot of evidence of that all around you. When we finish here, we're going to actually be able to go over behind the Hotel Concord to a project that is under construction. It is a public-private partnership that's utilizing historic investment tax credits, both federal and state. But our work is not done. You are standing in a building that, unless we have the state tax credit back, the likelihood of restoring this building becomes slim. It is a very difficult project to do without the state historic investment tax credit. So we are here today to show support, and we're here today to send a strong message to our elected officials in Raleigh that there is broad-based support for this tax credit. Again, thank you for being here today. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Scott Padgett, Mayor of the City of Concord.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. A special welcome to our Governor, Mr. Pat McCrory. Welcome to our Secretary of Cultural Resources, Susan Klutz, to Representative Linda Johnson, to our Senator Fletcher Hartzell, to Steve and Paul Fisher, F&M Bank, and I'm going to tell you in just a minute why they're here, because they are very interested and passionate about historic tax credits. You got to tell me who you are. Oh, you're the guy. Here's the guy. Diane, I told you I didn't remember what he looked like. All right. He's the one that jumped out on a limb and with faith and is restoring the building that we're going to go visit in just a minute. So, Patrick, thank you. Thank you. We are joined, Governor, as you can see, by a wide variety of people here. We have the Concord City Council and staff. We have the County Commissions and staff. We have the Kannapolis City Council and staff. We have Mount Pleasant represented here. Let's see, members of the Historic Preservation Committee, Board of Directors of Concord Downtown Development, Patrick Coughlin with the Regional Chamber and Economic Development. Members of the construction industry are here. Engineers are here. Architects are here. All these people are invested. And we have so many of our local residents. Raise your hand if you live in the downtown vicinity here. Look at these people. Several of these people told me right before we started they absolutely could not have done the project with their own home, these beautiful historic homes that we're so proud of. They could not have done those homes without the historic tax credit. That speaks loudly. Now, Governor, before we talk about historic tax credits, I want to give you praise and thank you for something you did. Now, back when the governor was a mayor and Secretary Klutz and I were a mayor, we and many other people talked about the equity formula. We talked about it all the time. We had other names for it. It was the unequity formula. Well, our governor, as soon as he was elected, he took that on as a project, and the state legislature, with the help of Representative Johnson, Senator Hartzell, changed that so that now the funds for transportation much more clearly go to where the need is. And because of that, and I'm seeing a lot of my fellow elected officials here nod, because of that, We have had a windfall here that will probably never happen again. We now have either spent or committed in the next few years $500 million right here.
Keep it down.
So, Governor, one more time, let's thank our governor and our representatives for this. Now on to the historic tax credits. We are in this room, we are all believers. We have such a beautiful downtown. A few years ago, we were an all-America city. Part of that was because of our quality of life, our downtown. Last year, we won something called the Hometown Showdown, which voted us, our downtown Concord, is the prettiest in North Carolina. We're very proud of that. And we have a lot of resident historians here, but let me recognize Councilman Ramseur. He always keeps us up. A couple of things happened right here. Our city was started 220 years ago. But right here, during the Depression, Charles Cannon loaned the state of North Carolina money to keep going during the Depression. And his bank was right down the street. The bank right beside of us was the original first charter, or it was Concord National, then several other names, but now it is Fifth Third, known around the country. They both started within a block of right where we're standing. So there's been a lot of history here. Now we're very proud in Concord, our council, of what we've done. We've laid a lot of good groundwork for downtown. So did the people, our predecessors before us. We have invested, and 15 years ago, downtown was a ghost town. And now we've got a very low vacancy rate. We're very proud of that. None of that could have happened without historic tax credits. None of it. We are proud that we have the tourism that we have. We have over 2,000 hotel rooms here out at Exit 49. We've got Concord, yes, there's our Convention and Visitors Bureau. I forgot them. Welcome, thank you. Because we have a big tourism. It's very much important to our economy. It's a big part of it. So the hotels, the Speedway, Great Wolf Lodge, entertainment, all the things, those are important. So we care about that, but we also care about our history, our historic preservation, because this is all about who we really are. And people move here from all over the United States, and they tell us how much they like the place, but they really like the feeling of the hometown, of a downtown. It's something that these young people are becoming to appreciate. And we've got, as I told Secretary Klutz, to ask her to, let's see if we can do one of these press conferences in Concord, because we are the poster child for historic tax credits. Because as Diane said, we've got a project right across the way there. That is, Patrick has spent money in and using historic tax credits. It's going to have about 24 market rate apartments. It's rehabilitating a former furniture store. Then we've got this beautiful gym here that the governor and Secretary Klutz and all of us are very familiar with. Think what can happen. Excuse me. This is beautiful where we are. But above us, there's about 200 empty rooms that are going to need a lot of help if we can save this building. But that's our goal. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to our own Senator Hartzell. Senator Hartzell has been in the Senate for 25 years. He is, I call him a passionate, realistic conservative. And he is invested in downtown because he is a native. So let's welcome our Senator Fletcher Hartzell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your remarks. I appreciate this crowd here to represent what is the best in this community, and I think the best of the communities all over the state. Let me mention just a couple of things, and I can't help but get personal. And actually, Governor McCrory and I, we had some very fond conversations. He has some history here as well. But in this very building, we had any number of us had our high school proms or the after party for those proms. I mean, and you can't forget that. And not only that, just walking up and down the street and seeing the history, seeing the facilities, you know what the utilization. The historic tax credit is not just a tax credit. It's a financing tool. It is what makes the difference in making a project useful, feasible, and it gets there. Now, I also need to mention, oh, by the way, your legislative liaison, Fred Steen, also had his high school prom here.
He's changed a lot.
He's changed, and he was showing me pictures yesterday when that was, yes, yeah, he probably showed you those. I would, if any of you, and I think a number of you have probably taken the train from here to Raleigh, and if you've done so, you look out at all these opportunities that are there. The industrial and commercial heartland of the state of North Carolina is physically located immediately adjacent to those train tracks. And if you look out on either side, you see the areas are not the world's best. And I would simply say to you that the historic preservation tax credit is absolutely essential to redevelop what is in effect the commercial and industrial heartland of this state, because it is virtually impossible to redevelop the state as a whole when you have what is in effect a cancer in the center of the state. That's why this is important, because it is not just a tool, it is actually the tool that gets us over the top. And it's important for us to utilize that to continue for all of us to redevelop the sense of place of where we are. And one of the folks who's really done a lot of that in her prior history, Secretary Susan Klutz, as many of you know, was the mayor of Salisbury for some time. And they used these credits to do a remarkable job of developing what is one of the oldest municipalities in the state. It was a major municipality when Charlotte was a trading path. And they've come back, and the downtown is vibrant there as well. And she's been in the middle of this, and I think is the ideal person to be a spokesman and leader for reestablishing this credit. Mayor Klutz is also a friend. Our children swam together a long time ago. Let me introduce Secretary of Cultural Resources, Susan Klutz.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is very, very exciting for me, and I am just thrilled to see so many people here who get it, who understand what we're talking about and why it's so important. When Governor McCrory appointed me 2 years ago to this position, he had very strict instructions for me. He said, I want the Department of Cultural Resources to translate into economic development and job creation. And I can tell you, I know of no better way to use my department in Raleigh than to try to bring back these historic preservation tax credits, and that is my #1 priority right now in my job and my focus. Thank you. And I'm here today to tell you we have a crisis in Raleigh. These have expired and they need to be brought back. They are critical for the economic recovery of North Carolina and what Governor McCrory refers to as his Carolina comeback. 90 of 100 counties in North Carolina have used them. We have seen $1.65 billion in private investment since they started. It's especially critical for the small rural areas. It's their only hope. Private owners take the risk. The properties have to be on the National Register. They have to follow strict guidelines that are overseen by our Office of State Historic Preservation. They have to successfully complete the project. They have to file their taxes before they even get these tax credits. They are the ones that take the risk, no state money up front. The problem is that we've run into in Raleigh a philosophy of tax reform that there should be no tax credits of any kind in the state. And we believe these tax credits are very different. These are economic development jobs. These are authentic tourism. This is a bipartisan issue. I have talked to just as many Republicans as I have Democrats who feel very strongly that this needs to come back. I have a personal experience, as been mentioned here in Salisbury, and thank you to the Fishers for what they've done in Salisbury as well over the years. Thank you, Paul and Steve. But 30 years ago, another family named Klutz, Margaret and George Klutz, talked my husband Bill and me into buying a building right in the middle of Salisbury on the square because it was called the Historic Klutz Building. When your name is Klutz, and you all know, since you're so close to Salisbury and Rowan County, that's the only place in the world you will find something called the Historic Klutz Building. So they talked us into it 30 years ago. We walked into this building. The windows were knocked out. Pigeons were flying through. There were dead pigeons on the ground, on the floor, graffiti on the walls. It was horrible. And my husband and I walked in that morning after they had talked us into it the night before and said, "What have we done? We've lost our minds." We didn't have the vision they had and that people have today when they walk into these places in North Carolina. We didn't have it. But I will tell you, we did it. And it wasn't easy, but we did it. And 30 years later, we have seen millions of dollars in downtown Salisbury. We've seen a renaissance, and I'm very proud to have been one of the first people to take that risk. I will just tell you personally. And that followed with 14 years of being mayor, where developers came into Salisbury, into our downtown, and they said, you know, we'd never do this without tax credits. The numbers just don't work. We wouldn't be here without them. I heard that for 14 years. And for the 2 years I've been secretary and traveling around the state, I'm amazed at what I see and how much help we need and how many people say to me, if you have anything to do with historic preservation tax credits, please don't let them go away. And I think something that's very important that can't get lost as we talk about numbers and taxes and tax reforms and tax credits is North Carolina's history. We've got a rich history in this state. Every community is unique and beautiful and special. And we have people in North Carolina, most North Carolinians value that history. And that tradition and those values that they learned from their parents and grandparents and the history that's represented in historic mills and factories, warehouses, department stores, schools, hotels, they just cannot get lost in this discussion of numbers. It's a tie to our past. They cannot be lost, and North Carolinians just can't continue being quiet. You have got to let the legislators know that this is so important to the state of North Carolina. Please help us preserve the past and help us to make the future brighter. It's now my distinct honor to introduce to you someone who has been tremendously supportive of historic preservation and of my entire Department of Cultural Resources. As a member of his cabinet, I see every single day the passion and the dedication he has for the citizens of North Carolina, and it makes me so proud that he is our governor. Ladies and gentlemen, the 74th governor of the state of North Carolina, the Honorable Pat McCrory.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I'll get down so I can see you all here. Mayor, I was honored to be a mayor of a suburb of Concord down the road for 14 years. And we had a great partnership then, and I'm glad to see we have a great partnership now. I still call Secretary Klutz Mayor Klutz. We mayors stick together because we've gone through very similar types of battles, and we're joining a team again to win this battle. And I need your help. That's why I'm here in Concord. And I need to let you know that coming here in Concord, downtown, brings back a lot of very, very fond memories. I used to come and eat here the Sunday brunch when I was 19, 20, 21 years old with the Henson family, the Glover family, some great families. We had a big table. I forget if it was on this floor or down below. And they had the best buffet here in the world. And then we'd go walk Main Street. And then it was very discouraging to see Main Street started going down. as other main streets throughout North Carolina and the United States started going down. And then we started seeing some revitalization, including in Charlotte, including the old mill towns outside of Charlotte, including Concord and Kannapolis and Salisbury. And you saw this revival of the center cities in North Carolina. And now is not the time to stop it. Now is the time to even expand it. Because as I recruit new businesses to North Carolina, this is one of the major jobs as a governor, is to recruit new businesses. And I'm pleased to report, as of last week, our unemployment rate had the second largest drop in the nation. We're down to 5.5% from a high of over 9%. But now is not the time to stop. Now is not the time to stop. Now's the time to continue that progress. Because when myself and Secretary John Scavarla bring potential clients, whether it be to Concord or to Roxborough or to Wadesboro or to Tarboro or to Wilkesboro, or you name the borough, we're going there, or to Concord. When we bring the people who are making the decisions to whether to move their business or expand the business, guess what they want to see? They want to see the center city. Because the center city will give them a signal. Is there vitality? Is there an economic future? Or do they see blight and decay and a lack of a future? So the appearance of the center city makes a difference. The center city, no matter how large your town or city is the living room. It's the living room of the region. And it shows the health of the region. And not only is it the living room of a region, it is where people meet and where communities come together and where deals are made and where people go to church and build their faith and where people help others and where people have their Sunday meals buffets. It brings a sense of ownership, of community. And that's what makes Concord so great, is there's a sense of community. And as we continue to rebuild this hotel and the building next door, we're bringing back that sense of community, which brings more choice. And so when I bring an executive who's considering investing in this region or any other region of the state, they want to come to an area that they want to bring their family. And the first place they go to is the center city to see, is there blight and decay or is there a future? And one thing I've learned as a mayor, and I see it as governor, is once you let blight and decay go block, it'll go to the next block, then the next block. Well, the same thing is true with reviving a community. You revive one building, and the next thing you know, the next building will be revived. And then the next block. And then the next block. Revival can move just as quick or even quicker than blight. And guess what revival means for the mayor and for the governor and for each of you? It means investment. It means more money for our schools and for our infrastructure and for our streets and for the next generation's quality of life. That's why this is so important. And I need your help. And let me talk to my members of my legislature. There is nothing more conservative than to give a tax break to an investor who's building something or rebuilding something that will last for generations. There's nothing more conservative than that. I don't believe in short-term fixes. One thing I've learned as a mayor and a governor, and I've learned it in business too, if you have a short-term fix, you're creating a long-term problem. This is creating a long-term sustainable fix which will last for generations. And each of us have a responsibility to leave this place a better place than when we came. I heard it often at First Baptist Church, just 2 or 3 blocks down the street. That's our responsibility, to leave this place a better place than when we left it. And I want to come back here within the next year. Mr. Mayor, I want a Sunday brunch here. And I want this place filled up with people staying, whether it be a full-time residence or a hotel. The potential for this building is absolutely incredible. And it's cheaper for the taxpayers if this building is revived because we already have the infrastructure of water and sewer and sidewalks. We don't have to rebuild something in a greenfield. It's an economic, common sense solution. It is a conservative thing to do. And so I'm asking each of you, I'm asking you to join your center and your House member Linda to come to Raleigh. You got to come to Raleigh now. This is selling the region, and you've got to talk to every one of these people and say, this is the time to act. I need to let you know I'm giving my State of the State speech on Wednesday to the House and Senate and to my cabinet. And this will be a major topic that I will be bringing up, and it will be part of my budget for this year that I will be submitting. So, will I see you in Raleigh soon? It's what it's going to take. And then the next generation will benefit from your work. God bless each one of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor, for that outstanding address, and we appreciate the passion and the leadership, not only for this, especially for this, but the many other ways that you are making our state a better place, and we appreciate it. I wanted to tell you, we had a little room up here where were some refreshments, and Lynn back here, who runs the hotel, we found out that you were going to come up and sit back there for just a few minutes, so there was an old rug back there that had stains on it and so on. So she sent someone and said, please go buy a new rug. You're going to love this. And she said, you got $200 to spend. Go buy a new rug. The person went to the store and told them what it was for. It was historic tax credits. And the lady said, just take the rug for free because that's the way I got in my building. So as you said, it affects all of North Carolina. It's not small or large, it's not rich or poor, it affects everybody. It's such a worthy cause, and I wish you could be standing up here and seeing what I'm seeing. This is pretty impressive. And we are so proud that you came here. We're going next door to see a work in progress. Pardon the mess, but this is what progress looks like. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Diane.
Thank you, Mayor Padgett. We felt very excited about being able to bring you into a place where you now roll up your sleeves and hear from some people who have worked in the trenches of historic preservation, if you will, for many, many years. We are excited to have Steve Fisher with us today. Steve is the CEO of F&M Bank. F&M Bank has been a leader in downtown Salisbury, not only helping to provide financing for projects that utilize these tools, but also undertaking projects of their own. Please join me in welcoming Steve Fisher.
Thank you, Diane. Tell you what, the governor nailed it. This is the living room, and I've done many of these projects, and this is my kind of comfortable living room. I can tell you this is a beautiful project. How many folks in the audience have been involved in a historic rehabilitation project? Raise your hand if you have. It's scary, isn't it? I mean, it's really scary. It's like standing right at the edge of the door of a perfectly good airplane and deciding to jump out of it, kind of scary. Because there's no reason to do it. Normally you just stay on that comfortable airplane. We have to incent people to take that risk and to take that step forward. Here in North Carolina over the last 20 years, we're number 4 in the nation, in historic rehabilitation. We have been given a beautiful legacy of these wonderful historic buildings, and we have to be good stewards of that legacy. Now we have to do it in a way that's economically viable and that makes sense. And I'm here to tell you that it does. At F&M Bank, we have done several of these ourselves. We have financed many, many, many dozens of these regionally, and they work. I want to give you one example. F&M Bank bought about half a block in downtown Salisbury. And it was old historic buildings that were all scheduled to be torn down for a municipal parking lot. Through the use of historic tax credits, we did a building just like this that houses our financial center. Next to that, we also did, leveraging with a public-private partnership, a professional center that has architects, lawyers, accountants, all downtown jobs. Right behind that, we donated the Waterworks Visual Arts Center, one of the regionally recognized visual arts centers here in North Carolina. We also have a beautiful Charleston garden in the F&M Trolley Barn, which not only houses our rubber wheel trolleys, it is also a festival location for all of our downtown events. Now that was about a $10 million investment in downtown, and I can tell you with the tax credits that were used there, it alone is a fantastic investment, but it is not the story. The story is the decade that came after that, and the $20 million in additional investment that happened in the surrounding blocks within a 3-block radius. And those weren't all tax credit projects. Those were also infill projects and private projects and all kinds of things. It's just like the governor said. This is your living room. Everybody knows what happens when you paint the living room. Where's your wife want to go next? It's the kitchen or it's the dining room, and communities do that. That's what we do, and that's how we grow, and that's why this works. That's why this is such a vital economic development tool, and I want to say that word again, vital economic development tool for our community. Without it, I don't know how we move forward. And I hear a lot of negativity around it. You hear things like, well, this program forces the average taxpayer to get into economic development. Well, average taxpayer, you're in economic development. Governments are in economic development, and we have to be, and we should be. But this is the very best kind of economic development because it stays here. This investment is private investment in first, they get the incentive after, and the building stays here. It cannot move to China. It cannot relocate to Mexico. It stays right here. It is a long-term viable asset for that community. I also hear a lot, well, it's unfair. You pick one business and give them an incentive, and you don't pick another. You're giving them an advantage. I'm going to address both of those. One, it's not unfair because the tax breaks go with the project and the building. Anybody that wants to do it, I'm sure Patrick would just as soon somebody else stepped up for this one too, because they're tough. They're tough. But anybody can come in and do these. They're open to the public to come in and do it. If your business wants to do it, come on in and do it. It is fair. And I will tackle the word advantage pretty quickly. I've done a couple of these myself. I got no economic advantage, and I can tell you I got no strategic advantage against my competitors. All it does is level the playing field between new construction and rehabilitation. That's it. And makes this a viable option now and helps our communities to move forward. I also hear a lot, well, you need to let the free market decide. Free market should decide how these things go. Government should be involved. How many of you have driven through a town where they let the free market decide? Do you want to live there? I don't think so. I want to tell you real quick about a small company in Salisbury that's part of that living room expansion. Integro Technologies, small technology company, out of town, drove through Salisbury, saw it, saw the architecture, loved it. Moved into a rehabilitated warehouse space 1 block from the F&M Financial Center, part of that spread, and grew slowly and surely. Last year, they moved into a 40,000 square foot infill project in downtown Salisbury that they built. That only happens because of these credits. You can clap for that one. That's an amazing story. It tells you how important the leverage of this economic development is. We are simply helping the private sector to step in and help us be good stewards of these gifts that we've been given. These are fantastic assets. These are a great tool. Downtown Concord has a great champion right over here in Diane. And she's out fighting every day, but we have just taken the biggest arrow she's got right out of her quiver. We've got to put it back in for her to be able to do what she wants to do and needs to do for this community. I want to leave you with this thought. As a state, we have to encourage those developers, encourage those business people, encourage those dreamers to step to that door, look out at that risk, and take that jump down into our communities. Because if we don't incent them to do that, they'll stay comfortably in their seats, they'll fly right above us, probably to Virginia, who still has all their credits, probably to Virginia, and they'll fly right over us while our downtowns continue to rot. We can't allow that to happen. We must make every effort possible to reinstate these tax credits. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand the microphone over here to Patrick Riley here in a second, and I want to tell you who Patrick is. First, for me, the mayor's already dubbed him. He is the man. Mayor said, there he is, that's the man. Now, Patrick told me very quickly, I am not the man. I am part of the team. He said, I've got a great team here. Patrick does rehab in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and he sees that not only the beauty of what he does, but the economic value that these incentives bring to the table and make his work and the work he does in these communities viable. So, without more ado, Patrick Riley.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you all for coming to our wonderful event here today. I'm going to try to keep this very, very brief because I know the governor is on a tight schedule. I also want to say before I forget that this slide presentation that Diane and her office were kind enough to throw together for us very quickly is we can make that available if you drop one of your business cards into a little basket that Kristen has right there, and she's going to put down there. And we'll probably make another version up that has a little bit more meat on the bones of it, but we wanted to try to keep this one pretty quick. Lastly, before I roll into the slideshow, I wanted to give a big hand to the guys that really make all these projects happen from our side of it, and it's the guys that are doing the physical work in the place, because it wouldn't happen without them. Obviously, I don't need to sell you guys on why we liked Concord, because Concord pretty much sold themselves. I can tell you that 2 of our partners on this project are based out of Washington, D.C., and I kind of had to talk them into coming down to Concord just because they weren't familiar with it. And then when they got here, they're like, why didn't you call us 4 months ago? We would have been here. So thank you all for making it an easy job for me. As we said, just go back real quick, this is part of a greater team. The rehab companies, rehab engineering, rehab development, and rehab builders, we're all partners. We all work together all the time. We're all vertically integrated, and that's the reason why we're able to come up with this fantastic product and try to keep the cost down as low as reasonably possible. Go ahead. And this is what the building looked like back in the 20s, right? 20s? So as you can see, the scope of work on projects utilizing these tax credits are closely scrutinized by the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office to ensure the historic fabric of a building is preserved. Mitch is around here. He's one of the supervisors of that process from the State Historic Preservation Office. Go ahead. We're going to have approximately 26 well, not approximately, we're at 26 now, we've decided. We've got most of them built. According to the North Carolina Main Street Decades of Success Place Economics study from 2014, the apartment will spend collectively over $275,000 in downtown Concord businesses annually. Next. As we can see, this place looked kind of rough when we first took it over. By our standards, it was in fantastic shape, though. Go ahead. That's the upstairs. Yeah, that's the second floor. I think that we're going to be going to shortly if there's time for it. Or are we not? We're not going to be able to. So this is one of our projects that we finished in South Boston, Virginia that looked kind of like the last slide before we got started and completed on the rehab. Next. Or we could look like this one, which was recently completed in Wilson, North Carolina at the Wilson Furniture Company building. Numbers must work for historic projects to be developed, and don't the banks let me know that every time I come to them with a project. At this time, obviously, several of our neighboring states offer historic tax credits, including neighbors in Virginia and South Carolina. Our company, Rehab Development, works in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, which is a smaller footprint than our construction company, which works from Maryland down to Florida, out to Texas, up through Tennessee. Without the historic tax credits, the numbers on most historic projects prohibit a developer from moving forward, limiting the pool of experienced developers who can work in North Carolina unless the credits are reinstated. One last comment about that. That's a very, very true, probably one of the truest statements that I can't highlight them any more than possible. We would love to move right from this one over to the beautiful hotel building right across from the parking lot that we just left. And with that state historic tax credit, if it was brought back into a form that it was recently in, it would be very, very much more close to the goal line.